This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, March 4th, 2024. Enjoy. Case notes for file 1497, written by Ig Vix, the Finnish boy who became Spiderman. It happened 2 days after I turned 8. I live in Finland, and we just moved into town. Our apartment was in these cheap rental high-rises, 8th floor. My grandma had given me a few comic books as a present, and I had been reading them since the party. Quite a stack, something like 10 to 15 individual comics. There was this one book, a Spiderman comic. It wasn't about the usual Spidey, but something about Peter Parker's clone acting as Crimson Spiderman. At least that's how it was translated into Finnish. I had just returned from school, so my parents were still at work, and I started reading this comic. At some point, the protagonist is crouching on a roof, jumps down and lands into the Spidey crouch position, hands between his legs. Without thinking anything, I just laid down the comic, walked to our balcony and climbed on the fence using a chair as a ladder. As I was sitting there, I saw some man down across the street. He saw me sitting there and started running towards our house. At this same moment, I had this really calm feeling taking over me. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and jumped down. When I jumped, I could hear the man scream, "Ei jumalauta!" No, followed by an abbreviation to God help me. Then I just heard wind in my ears. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground crouching like Spider-Man. The man runs around some high bushes just when I stand up. He stops dead in his tracks and all color escapes his face. He just stood there with absolute terror in his eyes, completely silent and looking at me for a few seconds, before backing away slowly without turning his face off before he's back at the corner, where he turns away. I returned to the lower door only to find out I had left my key inside. So I just sat down there and waited for my father to return from work, something like 1 hour. He was naturally surprised to find me there without my backpack. I told him what had happened. "Dad, I'm Spider-Man," when we were in the elevator. Dad thought it was just my imagination. When we returned inside and he saw my comic book laid open on the ground, with the page featuring the jump and the balcony door left open, he took away that particular comic book. He never allowed me on the balcony before I turned 12. And we moved to a better house, 3rd floor. He also becomes disoriented every time I mention this to him and changes the subject quickly. I still remember this occasionally, clear as day. I became Spider-Man. Case file number 1498, written by CyberFairy06. The case of the Phantom Pants. Okay, so this happened a few years ago now, but I still have no logical explanation for what happened. I sold a pair of pants on Depop. Black with white pinstripes and a drawstring waist. After shipping the item out, I received a message from a different buyer. Their claim was to have received these pants instead of the item they ordered. I apologized and told the buyer I would sort this out. This buyer had purchased a vest top. I assumed I must have accidentally switched the parcels, so the person who bought the pants would have received the vest top, and vice versa. I was about to message them to ask if they received the top instead, when they left a review. They gave 5 stars and were happy with the pants they received. I was so confused. The pants were a much more expensive item than the top, so they definitely wouldn't pretend they received them to keep the incorrect item. I messaged the first buyer, asking the brand and sizing on the item. It was definitely them. I didn't have anything similar. They both received this item, and the top seemed to essentially disappear. All of this was very strange and gave me a super unsettled feeling. So imagine how I felt walking into my bedroom and finding the same pair of pants in my room. I did not have more than one of this item. I cannot explain what happened here. I still try to think of a rational explanation, but I'm certain this was a glitch. Case file number 1499, written by Nothing But Angst. The plane gone in a blink. It was daytime, around 3 p.m., sunny and clear skies that day. As a frequent passenger, I look out the window and up at the sky very often. And on this day, they were driving and I was scrolling on my phone and occasionally sky watching. Then I noticed a plane. Too small to see the exact airline, but it had a dark blue detailing, so maybe Delta or American. It's flying across the sky as I usually see any other time. Then shifting my eyes to continue looking down at my phone. The way this happened is so fast it's unexplainable. In the very same second I began to shift my eyes from the plane back down to my phone, it literally blinked out of the sky mid-flight. Literally before my eyes fully landed back on my phone, I could still see it in my peripheral vision and saw it just disappear as if I blinked, but I hadn't. I didn't fully register what happened until my friend also got frantic. She almost fully braked the car in the middle of the street. We were in a residential neighborhood area, not on the highway, so we weren't going above 40 miles per hour. To ask me if I'd also just seen that. I didn't know she had also been occasionally watching the plane go by. So I began looking around and the sky was completely clear. I even completely stuck my head out of the window to verify what we had just seen. The plane was seriously nowhere to be found. This was such a quick, simple glitch, like clicking refresh on a web page, the plane just blinked. I don't think I'll ever forget this, it was too wild. I look at the sky way too often to mistake this for a bird or a bug, and having a witness further solidified this. Case file number 1500, written by The Third Wheel. The Impossible Drive from Statesville to Taylorsville. I was a satellite installer. I was driving between two towns in North Carolina, Statesville and Taylorsville. It's about a 20-minute drive of a straight 2-lane road with pretty much nothing but trees on either side. It's the middle of the day, and I'm driving along listening to Howard Stern on Sirius, when all of a sudden I go from wide awake to falling asleep, meaning 1 second I'm normal, and a second later, my head is drooping down and eyes closing. What snaps me out of it is my car bounces like it hit a speed bump, but I'm still in the middle of the road. Howard Stern is still in the same sentence, but my GPS signal says it's lost. And then I hear recalculating. And when it comes back, I realize I'm about 12 miles further down the road than I was, and I had missed my turn by 5 miles. My immediate thought, even though I consider myself a level-headed atheist, was that I fell asleep, hit a tree and died, and was now in some weird afterlife. It was such a strong feeling that I drove to the nearest gas station, got out, headed inside with sweaty palms, feeling the cashier inside was not going to be able to see me. To my relief, she did, and I bought a Red Bull. I still think I was hypnotized by the road and drove on some weird autopilot for a while. But losing GPS signal and not missing any of Howard Stern is unexplainable to me. I even used a Sirius ability to rewind, and there was none of the show that I missed. Case file number 1451, written by Tank Girl 556. My 1972 Yosemite UFO sighting. I saw a triangle-shaped object that was translucent. The lights outlined the shape. It was hovering by the E-wall of the top half dome in Yosemite National Forest. This was spring break of 1972. My best friend forever and her boyfriend and sister were on a backpacking trip to Duck Lake in Mammoth Mountain. I was alone when I witnessed this object hovering. It appeared to land at the very top of the mountain. It displayed more lights, but still no visible form. It then disappeared, and it was suddenly approaching dusk. It was 11:15 a.m. when I came upon this. My friends were pissed at me and didn't believe my story. They became my enemies, and didn't believe I'd missing time or possibly saw a UFO. The stealth aircraft weren't yet being made back in '72. Also, the stealth aircraft aren't invisible and can only be seen by its 6 lights outlining a triangle. I never witnessed an aircraft disappear. I do believe that this happens more than we know. My question is not how does this happen, but rather, why are these disappearances kept secret? What about the families and friends of the passengers and pilots? Why haven't any of these people come forward? What about witnesses of these occurrences? Hopefully the public will deem them crazy and no need for the Men in Black. Case file number 1502, written by I Am Infamy. The night I cheated death on a skateboard. I was a sophomore in high school at my girlfriend's house watching a movie. It was around 10 p.m. when the flick ended. I proceeded to skateboard home. I only lived like 2 blocks away, and it was a pretty quiet suburban neighborhood. I'm skating down the hill towards a larger street. Larger but never really busy, especially not at night. When I reach the intersection, I nail a rock. I had planned on blasting across the street since there were no cars coming either direction. I fly off the board, skid a good 3 to 4 feet on my head, right shoulder, hip and knee. I rolled to my back and screamed out in agony. Pain was so bad I really couldn't move. I look up the road and about 30 yards off is a car coming down the way, and where I landed, I was right in its path. 2-lane street, I was right in the middle of the lane. My head was aligned with the wheel. I tried like hell to move, I screamed, I yelled. I couldn't do anything. Car was about 15 yards off, he doesn't see me. Makes no attempt to swerve. 10 yards. I hear him barreling down. I close my eyes. Brace. Nothing. Open my eyes. Look where the car had been. Nothing. Hear the car behind me. Look where it was supposed to be in the other direction. Taillights cruising up the road. I hadn't moved. He didn't swerve. It was like he passed through me. Or I passed through him. There isn't really any way he could have passed over me. Not with the way I had landed and was positioned on the street. It was a little car. I can't explain it. I got up, terrified, bloody, and baffled. Hobbled home and went to sleep. No one believed me, but it's freaking true. Case file number 1503, written by Supernaturally Strange. The Mirror Mystery. Hi. A few days ago, I was dressing myself after a shower. My boyfriend was asking me if he could enter the bathroom to start to shower too. I answered, yes, but he didn't open the door. I thought that he didn't hear my answer, but I didn't repeat and continued to prepare myself. In my bathroom, we have a sink with a mirror right above the sink. This mirror is at the front of the door. So I was in front of the mirror when I saw my boyfriend opening the door, looking at me through the mirror, asking again if he would enter, now with a pitch voice, trying to be annoying. I made my voice pitch too, saying again out loud, "Of course, just enter for God's sake." But in the next second, the door was closed again. My boyfriend, who I swear I saw opening the door in the mirror, knocked on the door and answered, "You have to unlock the door first." After that, I realized that I was locked up in the bathroom alone all the time, so he couldn't enter anyways. So what did I see in the mirror? Case file number 1504, written by Natikins. The Teacher That Surpassed Time. A few years ago, my best friend and fellow English teacher texted me. One of my students had been arrested for indecent exposure on the bus. I was shocked, because I would never have imagined a student doing that. On the same day I received the text, my husband and I went to hang out with some friends. We were sitting on the couch when I remembered the story of my student's arrest. I said to my husband, "Hey, one of my students got arrested." My husband said, "I know, on the bus for indecent exposure." "How did you know?" I asked. "You told me last week." I tried to explain to him that I had just learned about it. If I had known last week, I would have already told my best friend. The fact she didn't know until that day when she texted me tells me I wasn't having some memory lapse. But my husband insisted that I not only had told him, we had searched on his office computer to see if it had made the news yet. I cannot explain how my husband knew this story beforehand, but the fact that he specified the charge and location before I could reveal those details tells me he knew. And searching for it online is exactly what I would have done, except I didn't. Was it an alternate reality he experienced? No clue. Case file number 1505, written by Searching for This, The Golden-Haired Guardian. When I was stationed in Italy, I had my own house in Pordenone. It was a 3-bedroom, way too much space for a single guy like me. I slept in the living room by my TV as the back bedrooms and hallways were always cold, and always gave me creepy vibes. But that's beside the point. I had a dream one night of a golden-haired child. He was running out of the back hallway into the living room for protection. I scooped him up as demons lumbered from the hallway and the corners of the living room. They had surrounded us. I ran to my side door leading to the porch, but Cerberus was there. Then I ran to the front door, but they were coming down the street as well. At this point, the child began to glow incredibly bright, and the demons hissed and disappeared. I woke up. A week later, I found the golden hair on my uniform jacket that was hanging on the dining room chair. I didn't know anybody with curly long blonde hair, certainly nobody that came over alone. But there lay this singular hair. I ignored it, but another week later I found another singular blonde hair on my couch pillow. It made me pause, but I still ignored it until a couple weeks later. I was walking down the hallway and saw a nearby shelf on my incense box. A singular blonde hair curling out of the little hole for the incense stick. I still find little golden hairs at random times to this day. Case file number 1506, written by Bacon Was Taken. The Destined Neighbors. My husband and I met in our late 20s. We grew up near each other, but went to different high schools and colleges. We're a few years apart and hung with completely different crowds. My parents put a bid on the house next door to his parents when I was about 11. It fell through and we moved elsewhere. While in college, he traveled to my school to compete in a game. Since it was homecoming, he ended up briefly watching the parade. Out of hundreds of people, he remembers me and tells his friends I was a cool chick. Not only had I been drinking, but I was dressed as a crab standing next to Ariel from The Little Mermaid. I had nearly crapped myself when he told me he was watching me dance badly around in the street. While attending a house party with my now husband, I was looking at pictures on the walls taken at parties his friends had thrown back in high school. I was on one side of a picture and he was on the other side of the big group. I went to about 20 parties back in the day. I do not remember ever partying anywhere near his area. My husband and I were best friends with a guy and girl who are cousins. We both went to endless family gatherings but never met. We heard stories about each other and had never seen a picture of one another. After 6 years, we finally met and were an item by the end of the night. We've been together ever since. Case file number 1507, written by Nebel Lich. The mystery of the disappearing Marlboro Reds. I used to work at Speedway for over a year and such. I started smoking there. Had a nervous breakdown there. Oh, by the way, it was a teeny Speedway right next to the ghetto. Anyway, one evening I was working by myself. Again, because it was so tiny and I even closed by myself. And one of my usual customers had come in to ask for a pack of Marlboro Reds 100s. The tall pack, soft pack. Now, having worked for a while, my way of grabbing the cigarette packs from their little homes and tossing them onto the counter had become quite sophisticated. This particular pack I grabbed between my index and middle finger, swung my arm downward towards my side, still holding it like that. But as my arm came down and finished its curve, the pack left my fingers and vanished. There was no sound of the pack hitting the floor nor the wall. It did not fly backwards into the open security door that was behind me. The pack left my fingers and left this realm of reality. The customer stood there just as dumbfounded as I was. The two of us stood in total silence before I slowly grabbed a second pack and re-attempted said stunt, just to hear what it would have sounded like. It made an odd thap noise, you know, the kind of sound you would expect a pack of cigarettes to make if it hit something. I sold him the pack, still a bit freaked out, and then proceeded to check the entire store for that lost pack. I even went across the store and checked behind racks and so forth. You know, a distance that would be impossible for the pack to travel. Nothing. Though it was cool, I guess. Still kind of freaky. I have other similar stories about things like this, such as water cups that vanished. Chocolate, toys, childhood toys that is. Now that I think about it, this sort of thing happens to me a lot. Maybe I'm a wormhole. Sweet. Case file number 1508, written by Pangelang. Tales from the Dark Southern Estate. I grew up in North Texas, and one of my friends has a cow farm and a lot of land. The name of the street he lived on was his family name. Me and my friends would go out there a lot on weekends, way out on the land far from his house. Bring a guitar and some smokes, and make a campfire and just hang out. One summer night, my friend asked if we wanted to see a haunted house. He said it wasn't really haunted per se, but it was way out in the middle of nowhere and was abandoned. He said he'd driven by it a few times on farm routes, but he never had the stones to go explore it himself, especially not at night. It was one of those times where no one wanted to be the first to say no, so we all said yes. It was a cool, clear night, and we piled into my friend's sedan. We were listening to some good old classic rock tunes and generally enjoying ourselves. We came to an area where we had to drive over a very old river, which was now a stream. This stream had eroded this patch of land for so long that it had become a very, very steep depression. There was a large plank of wood across the remainder of the stream, making it a flat plain to drive across. Our friend assured us it was safe for the car, even though it looked like the angle was too steep for a car to cross without being damaged. By this point, the atmosphere had changed. We were no longer just hanging out all fancy and free. Few of us were speaking, because we were just looking at the windows. Nothing but dark, looming trees and expanses of moonlit grass. We held our breath as we crossed the stream, and we crossed it. There was a sea change in the way I felt. It was as if I could sense the house getting closer. No one had said a word for the past 10 minutes, other than my friend giving us time estimates of how much further away we were from the house. There was nothing out here. Not even a paved road. There was a dirt road formed from cars, but was very old and overgrown, as if it had not been used except perhaps sparingly for a decade. Suddenly, I became aware of something that had been present for a good portion of the trip, but had occurred so slowly that I hardly noticed. I broke the silence. "Everything is black and white. I can only see black and white." Everyone else in the car started to freak out because they could only see black and white too. There was no color anywhere, just shades of black like an old photo. "Are we dead?" I asked. I was convinced we had died along the way, but had not been aware we were dead, like a horror movie. I still have no explanation for this. We pulled up to the house. Color had returned, it seemed, but it was so dark that it didn't matter anyway. The house was 2 stories at a slight tilt, and the face of the house looked menacingly down at us. It was an old southern house, with white pillars that had become discolored with age. Faux balconies jutting out from under the 2nd-story windows. About 50 meters from the house was a large, metallic silo. As the headlights from our car washed over the area, the darkness took its time to leave because it had become so settled there. We began walking slowly towards the house. In the front yard, there were lots of holes in the ground, freshly dug, about the size to fit a small potted houseplant. Inside the holes, we found crumpled up pieces of paper. On the paper were crude drawings, like children's drawings. They were of people, stick figures. Some of the stick figures would be upside down or laying down. Some of the stick figures had faces, and they were all sad or yelling about something. We went to the silo. It was unlocked. We went inside with a flashlight and lit up the interior portion by portion with the beam from the flashlight. It was totally empty and gleamed like polished chrome. It smelled like sawdust and old oats. I swore I heard the sound of a girl crying, but that might have been the sound of the hinges on the door. Finally, we went to the house. The doors were all broken off the hinge. There was a screen door and it was partly torn. We went inside. We broke up into groups and tried to explore the whole thing. We were all trying to seem brave, saying things like, "The thing I'm most afraid of is the floor caving in." There were closets, and we'd hold our breath before we'd open the doors, but found nothing inside. The whole house was completely dark and empty. We only had 1 flashlight, so there might have been parts that we had missed, but we wanted to get the hell out of there. We got back to the car. One of my friends dared someone to go into the house by himself, to sit in the living room and close his eyes for 30 seconds. He said he would do it. I couldn't believe it. I could never do that. He walked off proudly towards the house. We saw him go inside. The living room was the first room on the 1st floor, past the foyer, beyond the door. Several minutes passed. We thought he was messing with us, wanting one of us to go in after him so he could give them a scare. That's when we noticed a smell. Something smelled awful in the car. My friend who was driving looked down and saw a dead cat crammed down underneath the pedals. Then we noticed there was cat fur strewn about the car. We freaked out and started honking the horn and flashing the headlights at the house. Our friend didn't come out. Finally, my other friend and I went in after him. When we got to the living room, we found him sitting on the floor, huddled over, his back to a wall with his arms wrapped around his knees and his head buried in his legs. He looked up at us as if we should run away, as if it was too late. We told him to get off his butt so we could get the hell out of there. He pointed at the wall behind us. The lights from the car were still flashing, trying to get us to leave. Each time the lights flashed, we could see it. All of our names were written on the wall in red. Later that summer, a friend of mine went back to the house during the day and burned it down. Case file number 1509, written by Annie N. 97. The hero who disappeared without a trace. This is from 10 years ago, when I was in school and used to live in a small town in India. My dad had a business for which he had to frequently travel to the national capital. The only train that would arrive back to the town within the same day from the capital would arrive in the nearest city 20 kilometers away by 10 p.m. So this one time, he was coming back from the city after arriving from the capital. My dad's brother, my uncle, was also on the same train, but he decided to come back home in a bus. And since my dad had taken his scooter to the train station, he was going to ride back home. There was a neighbor's kid who asked my dad for a ride back home, and my dad agreed. There were no streetlights working that day. It was very dark, and the area was full of industrial vehicles. Unfortunately, there was a big trailer, trucks that carried cars and so on, parked in the main road diagonally. With no streetlights and a speed of 50 to 60 kilometers per hour, My dad's scooter bumped right into the trailer, and the front of the scooter literally crushed. It was a horrible accident. The neighbor's kid was luckily and magically safe and didn't get a single scratch. Some vehicles kept passing by, but no one stopped to help. Then came a big black SUV. A man in his late 30s stepped out. With the neighbor's kid's help, put my dad in the car's back and took him to the nearest hospital. Meanwhile, my uncle's bus was passing by the accident site, and he recognized the scooter was my dad's, so he left immediately for the nearest hospital to check if anyone's admitted dad. My uncle met the man who helped my dad, asked for his name and where he was from, thanked him for his help, and then the man left. The doctor said had the person not helped bring my dad to the hospital, he would have died of blood loss. My dad was in ICU for 25 odd days. He recovered in the next 4 to 5 months, and we really wanted to thank the man who helped. Since my uncle had already asked for his name and place, my dad asked around, and one of our relatives happened to know the man, since their wife and that man were from the same town. My dad and mom went to meet the man, and he had the same name, same place to stay, same car. He said, "Thank you for bringing these flowers and sweets, but I don't remember helping the man. In fact, the day you're mentioning, I wasn't out of the house at all." We were all so spooked, and for some time we kept thinking this has to be a joke or something. But my uncle confirmed that he saw the exact same man. Has to be the biggest glitch in my life. To date, we don't know who saved my father. Case file number 1510, written by I'm Lulls. The story of two souls meeting across lifetimes. I have never been able to explain this one, and it still haunts me to this day. Not sure if it exactly fits as a glitch in the Matrix, but perhaps a past life type of thing? I've only ever shared this with a few people in my life, so here you go, internet. When I was around 5 years old, my father, his girlfriend at the time, and myself visited a theme park. While we were walking around, I saw this girl my age and instantly recognized her. I didn't know her name or where I knew her from, I just knew that I knew her and I'd missed her. The look in her eyes when our eyes met instantly told me that she recognized me too. We both ran towards each other and embraced in a tight hug. Picture in that cliche reunited way, and started excitedly talking. I remember looking up at her parents. They were talking to each other and shrugging and laughing, like, what the hell? Our parents allowed us to walk around with each other for a while, and eventually ride the tram thing to another part of the park. I remember when we rode on the tram, they let us sit on our own seats in front of them, and we held hands. I remember eventually our parental units made us part ways, and the immense desire I had to not let her go. We hugged some more and went our separate ways. Never met her again that I know of. Case file number 1511, written by Indigo Wolf. Did Fido walk through our walls? We have a very regular routine on Saturday mornings. Partner and I both work, and we leave together early. Dogs ate breakfast, potty, then come back inside for 6 hours till I get home. We had a doggy door, but we very firmly sealed it because 2 of our dogs like to jump the 4-inch fence, then intrude on the neighbors. They have dogs too, and our dogs want to play. I got home today, and our back fence was still locked with this wonky lock my partner put on. I struggle to get it on and off. It's a metal loop that goes over the latch. My mailman has commented on how difficult it is, and he just brings parcels to the other door. Confirmed, nobody came into the yard. Also, there's snow, and no unfamiliar prints outside our gate. I went inside and looked, and the doggy door is still firmly in place. The other 2 dogs didn't get outside, and if there was an easy way out, they for sure would have gone too. We have snow, and my husky loves sleeping in it, and grumps when I make him come inside. I check the cameras. Shows us letting them out in the morning. Shows us putting them back in. 3 hours of nothing except neighbors' cars going by, then poof, suddenly, dog in the yard? He looks very confused on camera too. It's winter, we don't have windows open or anything. I went through the whole house and didn't find any place he could have gotten out. Did my dog just walk through a solid door? Case file 1497, the Finnish boy who became Spiderman. So 8th floor, we're talking at least 80 feet, if not higher? There's absolutely no way a kid or an adult or any human being could fall that far and land on normal ground and not be dead. At least broken bones, broken legs. No, there's no way. If you actually did jump from that height, in some way your body was able to absorb that energy and dissipate it out. Now it is true that kids in general have a certain resilience, but not to this extent. kids are not Spiderman to that extent. Now, when I was a kid, I would climb trees all the time and fall out of them all the time. It's just a normal occurrence back then, in the 90s. I guess kids don't really do that anymore. Something is lost in that, I would say. To me, there's no possible explanation for this outside of some sort of glitch. Maybe a guardian angel that somehow reduced your speed as you were falling? Something like that. It seems like your father knew and really believed it, because of the comic book and the window being opened. He knew you jumped, and of course, in his mind, like, how could that be? So it makes sense that he would be apprehensive. But I'm glad he didn't get angry with you. I think there's better ways to address parenting issues than just anger. Case also file 1498. The case of the phantom pants. Well, it's always good to go back to a good classic of quantum duplication. It never fails to titillate the mind, and kinda make you hope that something you love that is important will duplicate for you. Money, $100 bills, Subway sandwiches, that kind of thing. Come on, universe, roll those dice. Case also file 1499. The plane, gone in a blink. The quack standard strikes again. Multiple witnesses, seeing at the same time. No one influenced each other, just pure bizarreness. Seen as a duo. What you saw must not have been of this universe, because, if it was, a plane disappearance is literally worldwide news. Do you remember the Malaysia Flight 370, I believe it was? It vanished seemingly without a trace. Even the transponder disappeared. Now, was that a glitch in the Matrix? Maybe not. Could have been hijacked, I guess. But if it actually was a glitch, then it is worldwide news for weeks. My guess is, because I haven't heard of a plane disappearing like this in quite a long time, and not since the Malaysia one. Given that, I think this wasn't a plane that was in the universe, or it temporarily was in your vision and your friend's vision, but it wasn't really here. It was just a universal, multiversal transmutation, which is more common, and yeah, not an actual disappearance, because an actual disappearance is, for an entire plane, that's a DOP event that just doesn't happen. Unless the Malaysia one is an example of it happening. And in those cases, you have to ask, where the hell do they go? Is it just a different universe, but then there's multiple copies of themselves in that universe at the same time? That would be truly bizarre, and that universe would have questions that could not be answered. Okay, time for the quote of the day. The most wasted of all days is one without laughter. E. E. Cummings. I agree with this, and this is why I pretty much always watch at least one sitcom episode per day, just to get some humor infused into me, and it's great because even on a rewatch, I still enjoy the jokes and still laugh at them quite often, like in Friends. There's so many jokes I know exactly, word for word, intonation for intonation, timing, everything. I mean, I still couldn't pull it off as well as the actors do, but I know them well, could basically play them in my mind, and it's still funny, and never fails. I advise always having some humor in your life every day, even if it's jokes you know. Stand-up comedians, sitcoms, whatever it might be, get some humor in your life. Case notes for file 1500. The Impossible Drive from Statesville to Taylorsville. So, falling asleep transition from sudden death. So if you suddenly die from some stroke or some brain aneurysm or something like that, there's medical things that just can kill you randomly, instantly, and you don't even realize. Maybe the realization is becoming very tired, and then you're ported to a different universe and you wake up there. Quantum immortality. That said, it is weird that there'd be a significant difference in the other universe where you're listening to the same thing, but there's a delay where it happened, 12 miles, 10 minutes later. That would be a difference that throws a wrench in the theory of quantum immortality. Could there be some sort of technology that made you sleepy? But in that case, it also paused time itself. Actually, I don't really know how to fit in the fact that on Sirius, the radio was playing the same thing when you woke up. There was no gap. And the GPS also lost track of the satellites in the sky. So it really was like you were out of phase for a period of time, then were moved forward in space, but not in time. So somehow you basically exited the universe and reappeared later on, maybe 10 minutes later in a perspective sense, and the amount of time it would have taken to travel that distance. But the other possibility is a space-time portal Those are very frequent when driving, but that doesn't explain feeling sleepy. Maybe for some people, going through a portal has an effect on their soul and their body. They will actually feel a sensation of being sleepy. That's not commonly reported, but I guess it could happen. There's things that affect people differently. Allergies. Maybe you're allergic to space-time portals. That's funny. Case notes, file 1501. My 1972 Yosemite UFO sighting. So indeed, military stealth tech is not cloaked. Not in the sci-fi sense. It can be good at reflecting away or absorbing radar. So tracking it from the ground station, that's difficult. But if you could physically spot it, then you could still see it. It's not like James Bond tech where there's cameras on each side that reflect from the other side, so it looks kind of translucent. No. There is naked eye visibility. So given that a translucent UFO, triangle shape, well, triangle-shaped UFOs are common. And if they have this kind of technology, I can't ever say that it's not the military, though. Even way back then, the military is so far ahead of us in terms of experimental technology. It's just impossible to say. Could be aliens, it could be the military. Although given it was so long ago, I do lean more towards it being alien. Just because even back then, that kind of technology, maybe we didn't have it back then. I think today we probably do have some sort of naked eye invisibility. Cameras from the back and each side. If you have a computer fast enough to process the perspective angle from one person, that could work. But not from multiple. So it's also like in Mission Impossible, where to generate a field that looks realistic, you have to have the perspective of one person. If you have multiple perspectives, then it just can't compute. It can't display it for everyone. Unless they can infuse the information directly into their brain in a different sense for every brain, but I don't think that's possible. You need aliens with those Wi-Fi mental connections for that. Case notes file 1502. The night I cheated death on a skateboard. So yeah, quantum immortality is the most fitting for this story. It's just weird that there was no reaction from the car afterwards, because you were still in the same spot, and the car just passed beyond you. Often in these cases, the other universe you somehow narrowly avoided the collision, but the thing that almost killed you, like in a car, the person driving would still have noticed. Now maybe the person driving was on their phone or something, and that's why they didn't notice you in either universe. That's probably the most Occam razor explanation. Yeah. Simple quantum immortality and distracted driver. Case notes for file 1503. The mirror mystery. You saw your boyfriend's spirit peeking into a locked bathroom. There's no way he could have entered unless he has a key, but you would have heard it unlock and then relock as your boyfriend left and relocked it, because it was still locked when you went to check. The thing that's weird about that is your boyfriend's spirit peeked in, but doing so you saw the door open as well. I guess it couldn't be your boyfriend's spirit. It has to be multiverse peering. You saw into a different universe, the you in that universe. It's sort of like observing a game, a player in a video game. You're just watching them and they're living their life, and it's so similar to yours you don't realize you're in a different body in a different universe. I don't know if those events should excite us or terrify us, mainly because of how seamless they are. The universes that are around us, they're right on top of us pretty much. At least the one right next door to us is. They're right there. We just can't cross over unless the universe decides we should. What causes that decision? And now time for the poem of the day. In a kitchen warm and cozy, oh my, lies a pie, a sweet and savory delight. Oh why, its crust so golden, its filling divine, a slice of heaven in every single line. Apple, pumpkin, cherry red, blueberry, pecan, all in a spread, with a dollop of cream and a scoop of ice. Each bite a journey to paradise. From grandma's oven, the aroma so sweet draws us close with eager feet. A dessert so timeless, a treat for the eye. Pie, oh pie, let us never say goodbye. So this is more of a humorous poem, although it speaks to me a lot because food is divine indeed, and oh pie, let us never say goodbye. You know, I haven't had pie in quite a bit actually, not since Christmas, which is quite a bit for me. People like cake too, but pie, there's something, the buttery, golden, crispy crust and the filling combined, the textural dichotomy is brilliant. Blueberry pie all day. Strawberry is a good contender too though. Apple might be classic, but nah. It has to be blueberry. Case notes file 1504. The teacher that surpassed time. So this has to be a sort of time warp, multiverse transition period where somehow your husband interacted with a version of the future and then ported back into real time, and didn't seem to notice any other differences, so it must have been a very short scene, I guess you could say. Because it wasn't just information downloaded into his brain, which I think that kind of information is all out there, and some minds can receive it better or decode it better, but in this case it was an actual vivid scene, a memory of it happening, of being told it, not just information or knowledge being there, where it shouldn't be. This definitely has to relate to the multiverse and being shown future information in real time. Remember, there's a quantum time foam. There's multiple versions of the future. That's the whole point of the multiverse. Now, it is possible that every single possible future has already happened, but even then, the future is not written in stone. We still have to make our choices based on where we are now, unless this is a replay, which is another factor. You can go on quite the tangent on this topic. I don't know what the true answer is. All I know is, or all I suspect is, there isn't just one future. But the knowledge probably is out there, of at least one of them. And the one your husband saw was very near to this one, and knew about your student. Incredible. Case notes for file 1505, the golden-haired guardian. I think this was a physical manifestation of your guardian angel. The golden hair as a almost sort of breadcrumb leading you to it. I think if you keep collecting those golden hairs, something will happen. And you know, it is pretty common that bodyguards become emotionally attached to their protectee, the person they're guarding. That is very common. And vice versa. Needless to say, if you're not aware your bodyguard exists, you can't get emotionally attached to them, but they could get emotionally attached to you. Who's to say that guardian angels don't have emotions? I don't think they're automatons. So it's entirely possible that if we have a guardian angel, they could become attached to us, beyond the scope of their function, or their job. Case notes for file 1506, the Destined Neighbors. It does feel like subtle fate, and I say subtle because I don't believe in absolute fate, but I do believe in being influenced or directed in a certain path. So I think the gist of the word makes sense in this context. I don't believe you had to be with her, but I do believe that forces intended you to be with her. I also don't believe in just one soulmate, but I do believe there are people out there that are especially well paired for us, and finding them can be difficult, so getting help, hey, I'm okay with that. Cupid, shoot your arrow. Case notes of file 1507, the mystery of the disappearing Marlboro Reds. Right, and ending this on a classic DOP, but a bit more extreme, because most DOP happens out of sight, there's no physical touch, so that it was in your hand and then it vanished from your hand those do happen, but they're much rarer. And to me that could lean towards some sort of guardian angel interference. Maybe their guardian angel didn't want them to smoke anymore, I don't know. One thing I could say is that if all cigarettes just vanished from the earth, that would be a very interesting DOP event and probably for the betterment of humankind, won't you say? And now time for the question of the day. What is your favorite topping on pizza? For me, it has to be pepperoni or jalapenos. It's a cross between the two. I could have a pizza with just pepperoni or just jalapenos. Now, even better is pepperoni and jalapenos. And even better is pepperoni, jalapenos, and black olives. So I guess, expand on that. What is your favorite pizza in general? All the toppings allowed. Damn, I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. Why am I always hungry? Case notes are file 1508. Tales from the Dark Southern Estate. That detail about all the color draining from your sight, I wonder how that affected the world itself. Because light is just what color light refracts from or reflects from the objects surrounding us. That's color to us. If an object doesn't absorb red light, then we see the object as a crisp red apple. So if the world went completely black and white, that means the material configuration at the atomic level or the molecular level of all objects in the area was somehow morphed without destabilizing them. That seems impossible. So something drained the color from your mind, your ability to process color. Now that's something entirely different. Something was messing with your minds. That's the clearest example of that. And it was intentional, malicious, as you found out with the dead cat in your car, and the blood wall. Damn, that's terrifying. Going back to burn it down? Correct move. Good job, friend. And now time for the quote of the day. Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. Will Rogers. There's another adage that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, and it does tend to apply in life. You want to always be switching things up, taking chances, trying new things out. And if you're on the right track, you find what works. Go full steam ahead. Don't let up. Question sur file 1509. The hero who disappeared without a trace. I think most likely this was a guardian angel possession. The only human in the area was this man, and he was possessed by a good spirit, your guardian angel, to come and save you in your time of need. And of course, you don't remember the possession, so for him, it's like the day is blank. Or maybe a guardian angel is even able to implant false memories. That's an idea. And again, if it's not malicious, then that's not really much of a concern. Well, depending on the level of risk that the guardian angel possessing you would take. Obviously, if they possess you and your body is damaged, that's pretty bad. But in this case, everyone's good. Question sur file 1510. The story of two souls meeting across lifetimes. This does bring some validity to the concept of soulmates, but again, I don't believe there's a singular soulmate. I think there are multiple that would be well suited for each individual. And maybe some have more than others. Maybe some people really do have only one soulmate. They're such a specific, unique snowflake. And not saying that maliciously, but they're just so particular that there's only one other person in the world that is a true match for them. Maybe that's possible, but I don't think it follows that there has to be just one. And so maybe it'll follow that you will meet her again in the future. What an origin story for the relationship that would be. Question sur file 1511. Did Fido walk through our walls? Honestly, yeah, that's the most likely explanation, is that Fido just phased through. It happens so often with pets, especially dogs, and sometimes cats. I think it comes down to NPC placeholders. I think for any given moment in time, if you don't have a soul tethered to you, then the universe can just phase you out. You're like a prop, a tree, whatever you render in a game that you don't render when the player isn't in vision of it. There's like a vision cone, and if you move out of it, then you don't exist for that period of time until the observer returns. So I think if you don't have a soul, you're not a real player, then that can happen. Now, I do believe that many pets have souls, but maybe some of them are just advanced AI. In a certain sense, you don't want to believe that, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but it's just where my mind is at right now. And now time for the quote of the day. Honest criticism is hard to take, particularly from a relative, a friend, an acquaintance, or a stranger. Franklin P. Jones. The hardest thing is to give advice to a friend, someone you care about, or family, because, well, it's easy to dismiss advice, but if you say it wrong, then they can feel attacked, and you don't want that. Now, if they openly ask for advice, sure, but otherwise, be very cautious. I'm not saying don't give them advice if they're struggling in some area, that is very clear. Financial issues, job loss, or there's plenty of advice you can give, but just tread carefully is all I'm saying. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.